Hello there.
And then, okay, so it's Padme and Anakin's scene next, I think. Oh, and Padme opens up the message from her advisor on the ship, where he's saying like, you must contact me. The death toll is catastrophic, which is the message from earlier. Now, if that had been earlier on in the film, then I would have said that could have been how Maul tracked them to Tatooine if she opened that up with nobody's knowledge. But since it happens after that, then that's not really going to answer that. So Padme looks distressed, goes and talks to Anakin, and there's nothing wrong with this scene. It's pretty sweet. He gives her the necklace, which is a great motif throughout the films. And then we get their arrival on Coruscant, I think. Pretty good direction for a bit of exposition there. You've got the captain of the ship basically explaining to Anakin, Coruscant is one big city, which is essentially wanted for the audience. But having Anakin there and him explaining it to Anakin is a really good opportunity to essentially, give a load of information to the audience, but in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the perfect example of killing two birds with one stone.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so we've got Palpatine waiting on the landing pad and Valorum coming to meet them. I don't know if there's any problems here. I don't think there are. And I like that they said when they were making this that the roads of traffic, the flying traffic, I think they said it was all done on like an AI, so that it wouldn't just be strings of vehicles just moving. Like some of them would randomly move down between traffic lanes and turn corners and stuff without them having to animate them, which adds a bit more life to the scene, I think.
Definitely. I think Coruscant is the epitome of what Star Wars would look like in my head if I had to sum up a planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's something that's so sort of recognizable and relatable, but just in a galaxy far, far away, and it's different enough for it to be sort of new and interesting. Okay, so they're meeting the Chancellor, and the Jedi stop. No, what? So, do the Jedi stop with the Yeah, Jedi stop with the Chancellor, while Palpatine and the Queen head off. And I assume that they're stopping with the Chancellor to report their initial findings of, they were sent to the Trade Federation originally by the Chancellor, so they're just sort of reporting back what they found out, essentially, I assume. We're now in the Queen's apartment, with the Queen sat on like the sofa talking to Palpatine.
All right.
Again, I don't really have any problem with these scenes at all. I know, a lot of people think they're pretty boring. which I can kind of understand from their point of view, because it does, from surface value, it does seem to just be a lot of people sitting around talking, but it's the importance of what they're saying that is what makes these scenes great and really important to the story. But as for what's actually going on and being said, is incredibly important, and it definitely foreshadows Palpatine's manipulation that he wants to, become Chancellor, and it's clearly the beginnings of his plans to dominate the galaxy, but just done very subtly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that those scenes, I don't really know how you would execute them better.
No.
I think that they have a very strong purpose within the plot and in correlation to every character that's involved. So they're definitely necessary. And I think at that point, whether you enjoy them or not, or can watch them or not,
they
it's
still
completely
have to be
subjective.
There. It's kind of like George said about that scene around the table on Tatooine, isn't it? That they may not be the most engaging or exciting scenes in the film, but they have to be there. They are incredibly important. They're like the glue that holds the whole thing together, holds the plot together.
And are we approaching the part where they speak to the Senate?
We should be just forwarding a little bit. Oh no! First, we've got the Jedi Council scene.
Ah, yes.
Where Qui-Gon reports their findings to the Council, and the fact that they found a Sith Lord and Anakin, essentially. And of course, the Council don't believe them. They're pretty skeptical. Also, the version I've got here that I'm watching is the DVD one, so I've still got Puppet Yoda. And he definitely looks like he's on ketamine. I think it was a good decision to do the CG one afterwards compared to this one.
When was the CGI Yoda officially put in?
I think that was 2011. I could be wrong though. I think that was for the Blu-ray, because these ones are the 2006 DVDs. I don't think there was one in between.
So, what happened in Attack of the Clones then, when Yoda and Dooku fought?
I think that was the first time that they had CG Yoda. Like, he was a puppet in this one, apart from one scene. From the back.
So 2002 was technically the first time he premiered, but then the first time they put that version in the Phantom Menace was 2011.
One thing I didn't know that got brought up when we were on that stream the other day was that in the scene where Obi-Wan is talking to Yoda right at the end, and Yoda's like waddling around. Obviously, a lot of that from the behind the scenes is still like the puppet, with the chap under the floor moving him around. But what I didn't know is that from the shots from the back where you can see all of Yoda, that is actually a CGI Yoda, and it was like a prototype version that they were trialing for going into the next movie. So he's a real puppet for 99% of what you see of him, apart from a couple of shots from the back during that scene where he is actually CGI. So I thought that was interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
It's something I didn't know.
I think the CG on Yoda, especially for when it was made, was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the things to compare it to from the similar sort of time period would be like Gollum in the Two Towers, who I also think Gollum looks pretty good there, but he is more cartoonish than Yoda, so he can get away with not quite looking as realistic. But yeah, for the time, I think Yoda looked absolutely amazing. especially in Revenge of the Sith. I think the Revenge of the Sith model was again an even, just as much of a huge improvement from the Attack of the Clones one as that one was from the Phantom Menace.
Especially on the close-up, where Yoda is fighting Palpatine, and his fingers are slipping from the center of the Senate room. He looked way past his time. Like, that was maybe some of the best CGI of that time, undoubtedly, that I've ever seen.
Well,
I've seen a lot of movies.
One of the main things I noticed about like the changes was that in Attack of the Clones, he was pretty opaque all over, whereas in Revenge of the Sith, his ears, like you could see the light coming through his ears, and it just looked even more realistic. It was really, really well done. And that version of Yoda, especially from the 2005, would easily stand up today, I reckon, in any movie made today.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is if they ever bring Yoda back in any way, shape, or form, somehow, and that is the version they use, I'll not only be okay with it, but I'll be more than satisfied.
Yeah, because they tried to do the puppet for The Last Jedi, didn't they? But I just don't think it really worked. There was just something off about it that I can't really place, but there's just something that didn't quite feel right about it for me. Again, that's subjective, but
it just kind of seemed like the puppet didn't fit with the aesthetic of the movie.
Yeah, I think because it's such a huge, like, modern, high definition CGI, huge production movie, I think having the puppet Yoda didn't quite fit. I can see why they did it for like continuity, as in like CGI Yoda grew into like the Yoda from the original trilogy, and then like that's what he looks like when he died, so that's what they wanted to look like in the film when he's a Force ghost. I get that, but like I just don't think it worked. Particularly, the fact that
there weren't a lot of things from that movie that worked. So
very true. Okay, so Mace Windu's saying like he doesn't believe that the Sith could have returned without the Jedi's knowledge, which that's true, but that's probably because Palpatine has been clouding their vision for some time before the plan to reveal themselves even came into operation, so that the Jedi wouldn't even realize it was happening until too late.
And they've grown extremely arrogant since the last time they ever had to face a threat this big.
Yeah, and exactly. The Jedi in these films are arrogant. They are complacent in a lot of ways. They're far from like the sort of perfect altruistic Jedi they are supposed to be. They are severely flawed in both like their actions and their ideologies, which is the reason that leads to their downfall. And this is kind of the reason I like them so much, and also one of the problems that I have with the fact that these are prequels. Because like if the like we know by the OT that the Jedi have to have been, they have to have disappeared somehow because the Jedi aren't in them. So they have to, like the Order has to fall in the prequels, and that's done through showing their hubris and their arrogance and everything like that. But if the OT didn't exist, think of what we could have got from the Jedi during these films. What could have happened, what stories could have been told there. I'm sure that would have been fascinating to explore.
Yeah, definitely. I just think there was so much potential in general to expand on everything.
Yeah.
I think what what is happening in the next scene is Qui-Gon continues to try to convince the Jedi to let the boy be trained.
That's right. He's discovered like a vergence in the Force, and he's trying to explain about Anakin and that the midichlorians possibly conceived him. And they ask him to bring Anakin before them so they can test him, see what he's like. Because obviously he's going to be far too old for them to want to train, so they want to know whether it's actually worth their time to train him, or whether he's sort of past that point now, and see whether he's a threat, because they do think that.
Yeah, they're very influenced by fear, which is ironic.
Yeah, exactly. They preach about fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, but they themselves are kind of scared, fearful of Anakin. So
I think that's the main justifiable reason why Mace treats him the way he does throughout the prequels. Yeah. I think I personally like Mace a lot as a character, but especially because Sam Jackson betrayed him. I love him.
Yeah.
But I think he perfectly personifies what it meant at that time to be a Jedi, just completely blinded by everything that was going to happen.
Yeah, so
or that had happened.
I think Qui-Gon is sort of like looked on as of what it should be, of what a Jedi should be, and Mace Windu is sort of like the epitome of what a Jedi is now, if you like.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And then I think the next scene after this is just there's no problems with it. It's just Anakin is trying to ask where Padme is.
That's right. And it is Padme.
I think in this scene it actually is yeah.
It is, yeah. And it's Padme, and you can kind of see she has a bit of a pained look in her eye to sort of say she's not here at the moment, you know. But yeah, nothing wrong with that scene. Okay, and then we're into the first time we actually set foot in the Senate. So we're an hour and 25 minutes in nearly, and this is the first time we've actually even got to the Senate. So for all the people who sort of go, oh, there's so many Senate and politics scenes, they don't know, because this is only about 1:40 or something. This scene, it's really short. I think, is it the only one in the film, or are there two?
I think this is maybe the only one.
Yeah, because I can't remember whether the I object there is no proof one is like a separate shorter scene. I can't remember. We'll see. So
I think it might be the same. It might be the same scene, because isn't Palpatine trying to convince Queen Amidala to sway the Senate into a vote of no confidence?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, yeah. And this is also obviously the scene where they elect to send a delegation to go and testify for the invasion on Naboo, which people have a problem with because the Jedi could supposedly have given evidence, which I think we've already covered, the fact that the Jedi it was more important to go to the Jedi Council and report the Sith and this boy that they've found.
Not only was it more important, but you covered, you made a great point. Yeah. They were sent there
in secrecy behind the back of the
in secrecy.
Exactly. So
it's like when you hack. It's like if you hack into someone's phone to figure out that they've committed a crime or done something awful, but Is that really
yeah, exactly. You've
evidence?
also committed a crime to do that, so it looks bad on
Exactly.
you as well. So especially for, I mean, it's like the President of the United States himself ordering two hackers to hack into Russia, and they discover a plot, you know, to destroy America, whatever, launch nukes, whatever. Um, the fact that he sent hackers to do that looks pretty bad without consulting anybody. Like he just did it on a whim himself. Like that would reflect really badly. So he would try and want to
Especially,
distance himself
like
from
you
that.
said, especially if he didn't have any support or consulting from other officials.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I can't remember what the crawl actually said, because I don't know if it actually said that he didn't consult anybody, but it does just say that Chancellor Valorum secretly sent two Jedi Knights. So I think that does imply that he did it without anybody else's knowledge, that he acted alone essentially behind the back of the Senate. I mean, it's
Yeah,
an understandable thing to do, if the Senate is shown to be full of like red tape and corruption and not getting things done. It's an understandable thing he would want to do, but it's just like not the right thing to do.
and he turns out to be correct,
Yeah, exactly. He turns out to be right,
coincidentally.
but the Senate turns on him because he can't do anything about it because of the state of the Senate, the state the Senate's in, with its bureaucracy and its um, just the way it works, which is why he
I
ends
don't
up
think the
has his
system
vote of
works.
yeah, yeah, which is why they call for the vote of no confidence. But yeah, so I think we've covered that. I'm not even sure that would even be classed as a problem, as a flaw with the Jedi.
Oh, not even close,
Um,
because it's explained
it,
within the movie.
yeah, yeah. That's just that's a non-problem there. Um, as for it being too long, I think we've already debunked the fact that it's only like just over a minute long or so, maybe a couple of minutes. Um, and for people who sort of get pissy about sort of like, oh, people don't talk like that, they don't sound human. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. And have they ever heard politicians talk? I don't know what
Yeah, they don't really sound human.
exactly. I mean, I can't speak for like the American political system, but here in Britain, in the House of Commons, if you ever hear people speak, it's so weird, because it's the chairman of the House calls on each person essentially, and they stand up, and he sort of announces who they are in a very bombastic way, and then they sort of talk about, oh, the right honourable gentleman from wherever, and they speak extremely formally, um, and they talk like robots. They don't talk like human beings, even in our world. So for Star Wars, that is not a problem whatsoever.
No, it's not even approaching
No,
the realm of a problem, especially if it can be directly found in our world.
exactly. Uh, and I'm just watching the Neimoidians come up for the I object, there is no proof sort of bit, and the way they're talking, it's just identical to like Boris Johnson in the House of Commons. It's the clear inspiration of Lucas clearly knew what he was doing with his politics. He clearly knows. I don't know whether he studied like politics or whether he just knew a lot about politics, but he certainly did a great job at sort of incorporating it and making it feel realistic when he incorporated it into his movies.
He definitely, if he didn't research it or research anything specifically, he definitely had the intuition to know exactly how it works
Mm.
and what it would seem to be about.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I think other than that, there's no real problems with that scene, other than the fact that people have problems with them wanting to send the delegation and all of the red tape and stuff. But that's like supposed to be there. That's the point. The whole point is that they aren't efficient, and that's why it's failing. And I think
exactly.
I think.
And you go ahead.
I was going to say, like on that EFAP, they were talking about like, well, it's a flawed system, so it's bad. They should have a good system in place. But it's like, no, that's the point. It's supposed to be a flawed system. That's why it falls.
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for it being corrupt and not feasible, then the entire purpose of the scenes wouldn't even be there. And real quick, something I wanted to mention was I heard people or fans of Disney's trilogy complaining about certain fans making claims that there are real world politics in those movies. And then sequel fans will say, well, prequels contained a crap ton of politics. I would say, since it's really out topic, I'm not going to speak to any of my opinions on any of it. It's completely different.
Yeah, it's totally different context and situation going on. Because all of the politics, like the in-universe politics in the sequels, is bare bones at best. There's very little going on there in terms of any explanation or anything. Whereas in the prequels, there's so much going on that it's a huge part of the trilogy. It takes a lot of inspiration from other sources, like the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Galactic Empire is clearly heavily inspired by Rome in the early centuries BC, where the Roman Republic it fell because of corruption essentially, and then I can't remember which emperor it was, but he essentially called for it to be dissolved and re-established into a new Roman Empire. I mean, you can see the similarities there. And it's all based on like real world politics that happened. The same with the OT, that a lot of people draw the comparisons between like Vietnam and World War II and stuff like that. Whereas in the sequels, you just don't get any of that really. And in terms of like non-in-universe politics, the originals, I think, like you could stretch to say they had a bit of a political message, but even then it would be a stretch. The prequels, I would say, didn't really have a political message. It was sort of basically everything is murky. There's no good, there's no bad. It's all sort of anyway, and whereas the sequels, there's huge amounts of non-universe politics that are pushed through in those. So
yeah, we could
golden.
sit here and talk about that for a long time, but I think the point is, I don't understand why in-universe politics would be considered a negative thing, especially when they so heavily influence the plot of the story.
Yeah. Absolutely, it does so much world building and explanation, makes it feel so lived in, and it just expands upon the universe so much more. It gives you so far greater context as to what's going on in the landscape. Especially since like the film we're watching at the moment is set during peacetime, essentially. There's not even a galactic war going on here, so the context for what starts that war is incredibly important.
Yeah, incredibly, because that's basically what all the movies turn into, is the war.
Yeah, absolutely. It puts the war in Star Wars.
And people have a problem with
it. Ridiculous. Okay, so the next scene is Obi-Wan challenging Qui-Gon about Anakin, about what Qui-Gon wants for the boy, which I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with. I think it's a decent scene, nothing wrong with it. And then
this is Anakin being tested by Yoda and Mace.
Yeah, that's right. Which again, I don't really have any problems with. I'm not even aware that people do have problems with this scene. But they're clearly impressed by. Yeah, exactly. They're clearly impressed by like what he can do, and that sort of does make them fearful of training him. So pretty much everything here is great story-wise. Looks great. So what's after this scene?
Jar Jar kind of describes Amidala how his people are warriors.
That's right. Yeah. And let me see if I can rewind just to see. Is it the actual Padme or is it the decoy here? No, it's the real Padme. But I guess Jar Jar doesn't know that. So like, this is the same person who was like helping him out of the engine on Tatooine, but he has no idea.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that that Padme sort of is beginning to care about the Gungans more. You know, because she's now spent time with Jar Jar, she's helped him out, and now when Jar Jar's like, "Oh, we've got a big army. Do you think we can win?" She's, you know, like, "I hope so." And when he's sort of talking about whether the Gungans are going to die, she definitely says, "I hope not." You know, which is not what you'd expect from the Queen of a people who are at odds with the other species. So it shows that she's clearly growing and learning as a character.
Definitely. I think Padme's character progression in that aspect of just dealing with the responsibilities of being queen at such a young age, they could have been handled terribly. That could have been a completely dead aspect of her character, and what I mean by that is it could have just been there to be there, if you know what I mean. I mean, it could have been there to support the plot, but I feel like George actually made her backstory and where she was a useful part of her character and the story.
Yeah, I thought it was handled extremely well. It's not really going to come up again, but the fact that she is, 14 and queen, that is not a problem for the film. That is just like...
No, it's part of the culture of...
Exactly, people need to stop complaining about that, because that's just not a problem. You know, like I've said before, we've had kings and queens that are younger than that in this country. And the fact that she's a queen but heads up a democracy, you know, I don't see why is there confusion? Like, it's not complicated.
Especially when it's like you said, it's happened in the real world. That's where some of the murkiness comes in with criticisms of the Phantom Menace and the prequels in general. Is a lot of the criticisms are people asking why certain things are included in the films when they exist in our world.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost as if to say we shouldn't try to relate the two to make it feel more tangible.
This is Palpatine talking about him, his plans to become Chancellor, and I think it's some great acting on his part and great foreshadowing. I will be Chancellor. He knows what he's doing. He's playing it very well. So Palpatine's just playing all of this, you know, as he goes. He knows what's going on. So Padme's off back home to try and help her people, leaving Palpatine to take control of the Senate and become Chancellor, I think. No, there must be two... No. I was going to say there must be two Senate scenes for the one he gets elected Chancellor, but I think that happens off screen. I might be wrong. Okay, then it's the Council refusing to train Anakin, and there's no real problems here. He's too old. They don't want to train him because they're afraid of his attachments. They're afraid that he's very, very powerful, and they'd rather essentially not get involved. So there's no problems so far. What's the next scene? Okay, and now they're going back off to Naboo. Oh, and then we've got midichlorians again, which we've already discussed as why they're not a problem. And I do like Qui-Gon's explanation here. It's a good explanation.
He's also having a conversation with Obi-Wan right now, correct?
Well, he's just talking to Anakin at the moment about the midichlorians.
Wait, I think the part I was talking about was before he started talking to Anakin, when Obi-Wan is Let me
just go back a bit.
He's like, if it's, I mean, no disrespect, Master, but like, we should listen to the Council. I don't think Anakin should be trained. He's dangerous. They all sense it. I think it just plays more into Obi-Wan's character.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how unfit he is to be Anakin's master.
Yeah, which is what is, he failed Anakin, essentially. He wasn't fit to be his master. He wasn't fit to... it was a burden. He didn't want to train Anakin from the beginning,
Exactly. I think it was beautiful how Dave Filoni described it.
Yeah.
In the behind-the-scenes cut from The Mandalorian, how the song is called Duel of the Fates and everything, because it was literally the duel of the fates for Anakin and the future of the galaxy.
Yeah, if that fight had gone like the other way, if they'd have killed Maul but he hadn't killed Qui-Gon, the galaxy probably wouldn't have fallen and the Empire probably wouldn't have risen. That's how important and pivotal that fight is. And I think that escapes a lot of people.
Yeah, I would agree.
So then he talks to Anakin, and then he talks to the Queen about going back to Naboo. Jar Jar gets his "we said going home," and then we're back on Naboo. And I love the nighttime shot of the overhead of the palace, really well lit. Palpatine talking to Gunray. No real problems there. Okay. So then we're back to the Queen in the ship, and it's Qui-Gon essentially saying, we can protect you, but we can't fight a war for you. Because they want to go and relieve Theed of the invasion of the Trade Federation, but they don't have anybody. And again,
is this when the Queen? Oh, go ahead. My bad.
No. Go ahead.
Is this the part where the Queen proposes the idea to recruit the Gungans to help them fight their planet's war?
That's the part. So I assume the next bit is them landing to then go and see the Gungans. Okay. So this might come under our partial problems section, if you want to call it that, in that they're now coming down towards Naboo, and there's only one Trade Federation ship rather than the blockade.
Yeah,
which that does seem to be a problem. However, hold on, one ship blockading. However, I think when we talked about this the other day on the other podcast, we did come up with like a potential reason, which was that once they've taken the city, they don't want to look like they've invaded in case the like the delegation from the Senate comes. They still want to look like they're just, a trade blockade or whatever. So they don't. So by taking away all of the other ships, they just look like a single innocent trade blockade.
True, because now,
but none of that's actually stated or explained or anything. It's just kind of there. So maybe a line or two would have been sufficient, perhaps. If Gunray had said to like one of the other Neomordians or a couple of droids like, take your ships take your ships away, or whatever. So just some line that could explain that.
We have to assume our plan has been figured out by the Senate by now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be a valid criticism, that it could have been handled better, if that's actually what Lucas was going for, if it's not just a mistake, So that's what I'd say about that. I'd say it's in the vein of the other ones where it's kind of a mistake. It can be explained, but I think it just leaves a bit too much to the audience to do the explaining. Leaves it too open. Doesn't explain enough for it to sort of be easily inferred.
Hey, Editing Palps here. Since we recorded this, I've had discussions about this with people, and I no longer think that this is a flaw or a plot hole. Maybe in execution it could have been a little bit better explained, but in terms of what's actually going on, it's totally fine. The Trade Federation has a blockade to hold the planet under siege so they can enact their treaty at the beginning of the film. They're then told to invade the capital, which they do, and so they now have control over the planet from the surface. And the Queen has already escaped, so there's no need for the blockade anymore. They have control of the planet. That's what the invasion was. The blockade would just be sat up there wasting their resources. So it's understandable for them to just leave a single command ship up in orbit to control their ground troops. So, yeah, after giving this section a little more thought, it does actually make sense for the Trade Federation to do this, and why the blockade is no longer here. Anyway, back to the video.
And then... Right, they land in the swamp. Oh, and then we get that scene with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. And then... about Obi-Wan questioning Qui-Gon and whether he trusts the Queen's judgment and all of that. Which is a good little scene, there's nothing wrong with that. Jar Jar gets back and tells them that everyone's left the underwater cities, which is what we heard about earlier, so that was set up. So they go to the secret sort of Gungan location. That's fine. I don't know why it's so particularly secret. It does just appear to be a forest clearing. But it's fine. And there's all these ruins around and these like stone heads, and I don't know whether these are supposed to be sort of like ruins from the ancient Naboo people that have been long since forgotten, or what these are. It's a lost culture or something. But either way, it adds some great like history to the place.
Yeah, don't they touch on it in a few episodes of Clone Wars?
Oh, is that the one with where Grievous is captured? Is it that those couple of episodes?
I think maybe
I can't remember off the top
it
of my
might
head.
be.
Yeah.
I just remember
Yeah.
something had happened on Naboo that caused a few of the main characters to go there.
Yeah.
I
I
forgot
can't
what
remember.
season that was in.
Yeah. It might have been season 4. I'll have to rewatch those, but yeah. Again, that is nothing that needs to be explained in the film.
No, it's just a cool mystery.
Yeah, exactly. So they go and meet the Gungans, and they ask for their help. Padme reveals herself, and the Jedi, exchange their looks of "told you so," while everybody else is shocked. So I can't think of any problems with Padme asking the Gungans to come and help them. Any ideas? Is there anything I'm missing?
No, I mean, it seems completely realistic. The queen of their people is on her knees begging them for help. So it was probably very, very humbling.
Yeah.
So it all makes sense why they would have motive to help them out.
Exactly. That's all right. So after that scene, we have got Sidious talking about it's an unexpected move for her. It's unexpected. Darth Maul will handle it. Oh, and then we've got their plan to enter the palace, which, so they're clearly wanting to go in via these tunnels, which I would say is totally justifiable. Most probably big old ancient palaces and castles have tunnels that lead through them, so I don't see any problems with that. I mean, they weren't exactly set up, but there's no real way for them to be set up previously in the film anyway, so don't see a problem there. So their plan is to go in. Excuse me. Their plan is to go in and eliminate the Viceroy, or at least capture him, so that without him, the rest of the droid army doesn't know what to do, and they surrender. Which I think is essentially what they do anyway. So it's a pretty successful mission.
And the sequences in which it happened make complete sense if you...
Yeah.
Well, of course, you're watching the movie right now.
Yeah, exactly.
They trick trick them into believing the decoy is, of course, the real queen.
Yeah.
And then that's how they recapture the capital.
I don't think we actually see them go through any of the secret passageways to get there, which could have been a cool scene, but I don't think it was needed, so I don't mind that it wasn't in there.
Yeah, it's perfectly believable that all the people who have been assigned to guard the queen there and the queen herself knows the secret tunnels within the...
Exactly. And the fact that they're essentially fighting on their own turf, the fact that Panaka says, once we're inside we shouldn't have a problem, is totally justifiable. They'll definitely have the upper hand. They've got the element of surprise, they know where they are, they know what they're doing. Yeah, they're well prepared. So I think this is where we get to the point about Qui-Gon bringing Anakin into a war zone, which is slightly questionable. So
I think that it's somewhat justifiable, and there's only a few reasons of why I can confidently say that. after the Jedi said that they want to train him, and everyone else that Anakin knows is also going into battle, I don't really know if there was much of a choice. I mean,
There's
in
not a
theory,
lot of a
wouldn't
choice, no.
leaving him alone be just as dangerous?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they could leave him potentially with the Gungans, but then they're just leaving him alone, exposed in the forest when the Gungans are about to go to battle anyway. You could leave them with the women and the children Gungans, but I don't know if he'd be any safer there, and if the Trade Federation, decide to go and ransack that area of the forest.
Exactly. Then they might slaughter all of them.
He could have left him on the ship, but again, the Trade Federation would probably be looking for the ship and either go in and raid it or blow it up. So, I mean, there's not exactly many options that Qui-Gon can do.
Waiting in the cockpit, in all honesty, if you really think about the situation, sort of seems like the smartest thing to do. Qui-Gon obviously understands that Anakin is more than a capable pilot at this point in time, and he has an easy escape in case things really go south.
Yeah, exactly. And Anakin is clearly Qui-Gon's main priority until they get inside and he's safe. So it's not like he's just sort of taking him in willy-nilly, going in, taking him deliberately into danger. His main focus is on Anakin and getting him safe. And I don't know whether his intention was for the cockpit was to tell him to be in the cockpit so that he can escape, but it worked out very well that Anakin was kind of smart to think, I'll get in there because that looks pretty safe. And to be in a starship, it's pretty well protected. That's kind of the point of it. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much of a problem with it, but I can see why it is a little bit of a problem. Even if it
could
can
see
be explained.
people's slight issues with it.
Yeah, exactly. Qui-Gon bringing Anakin into Warzone. So, apart from that, I can't really think of too many actual flaws left in the film. Because the Battle of Naboo...
So there's a lot of controversy around the actual battle that takes place with the Gungans and Anakin. Anakin destroying the.
That's right. So the fact that the Gungans have energy shields, I would say, is totally justifiable, since it looks basically like it's the same technology they use to for their cities underwater. So I'm fine with them having the shields, and I'm fine with the fact that they block out blasts of fire, but you can pass through them.
I'm also fine with the fact that they know how to fight, because it would make sense for a civilization that is at odds with someone else on the planet to have warriors.
Well, exactly, yeah. As for the staging of it and what's actually happening, I guess you could argue that tactically it doesn't really make a lot of sense. They're just fighting on a big field, while the others sort of like just advance towards them. But you got to remember that this is like it's a distraction technique. They want to look kind of vulnerable so that the Trade Federation attack them, which diverts troops away from the city. They're there for a distraction. They don't want to look impenetrable. They've got to be a fairly easy target, otherwise that won't work as a distraction.
Exactly. And for the gripes about Anakin destroying the control ship, I don't know what else to say except you're welcome. What Anakin says himself. Now this is pod racing.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been made clear that not only R2 was with him,
Yeah,
correct?
and he
So
used the
not only
autopilot as well to fly up there.
yeah, so R2 was there. He used the autopilot. He was obviously already a capable pilot, and he accidentally destroyed the ship once he was on there. It was a crash landing, which I know
Yeah.
a lot of people don't remember.
Exactly, because
And
a lot of
he
people
got
point
lucky.
to it as like an example of Anakin being a Mary Sue, that he can do everything and he like does it all by mistake and it saves the day. But people don't, or rather neglect to remember that it was all set up previously with him being a good pilot and possibly some intervention from the Force. So yeah. And the fact that he destroys the reactor room accidentally with the torpedoes, I don't have too much of a problem with either. I mean, that's perfectly feasible. As for I think somebody brought it up on something a while ago. The fact that the reactor room leads straight onto the hangar with a big opening, that seemed odd. I would say probably not really, because if you have to do repairs or anything, doesn't it make sense that it's just nearby, near to the hangar, easily accessible? So that's my stance on that.
Or you could, if you're comparing, you could argue the same thing about the second Death Star.
I was
Why
just about to
would
make
the
that
Empire?
comparison.
Why would the Empire, knowing that the rebellion can blow up one of these things, leave a direct path into the second one's vulnerability spot, just for them to be there like sitting ducks?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes no sense.
No. So yeah, I would probably say that the Phantom Menace one makes a bit more sense, because it's like it's a much smaller ship compared to the Death Star, and it is tucked away around the back, but it still needs to be accessible. Whereas the Death Star is just like, oh, come on. Like in the first one.
Yeah, I mean, of course you could
like you made it
make
worse.
the argument. Yeah, exactly. Of course you could make the argument for the second one that, okay, it wasn't fully built, so maybe or maybe there were definite plans to solve that problem, or maybe it wasn't a problem at all. It just wasn't finished. But they should have known that while they were in the middle of a war, to maybe be cautious of weak spots on their second super weapon that the rebellion is most certainly aware of.
Yeah, exactly. Especially considering that they know what happened to the first one, and that the second one has an even bigger flaw. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
And the last gripe I've heard people talk about with the Phantom Menace is this specific part of the fight where Obi-Wan comes back up and cuts Maul in half.
Yeah.
People don't understand why Maul didn't just kill him there. And there's an obvious explanation from what we see from Maul's character just within that one fight alone. Maul is obviously malicious.
Yeah.
And he's bloodthirsty. And not only that, but he's also an apprentice like Obi-Wan. And he became very arrogant. And then that's why we see such a shock on Maul's face when Obi-Wan does eventually cut him in half.
Yeah,
because
he's surprised.
In all his blind arrogance, he couldn't have possibly imagined that Obi-Wan was going to do that to him.
Yeah, I mean, I'd totally go for that. There's also the thing about the gates as well at the just before that, about what the gates actually are, what they do, which is I think a fair question as well, because it doesn't seem particularly intuitive as to what they would be. I think they are like security doors, as I think are shown in the Clone Wars, but they seem to just sort of turn on and off at random intervals. which I'm not quite sure why, still to this day. So I think there is a valid criticism there. And again, the fact that if Force Run really was a thing at the start, then Obi-Wan Force running towards Qui-Gon would probably have been a good idea. I guess you could say that maybe he was tired after his big long fight with Maul, and the fact that he just had to like jump up the equivalent of like 10 stories of a building to get back to where he was. You could probably say he was like all forced out, so he didn't have enough energy to do it. But that's still a possible flaw.
Well, besides all that, the only two other things I could think of would be the choreography and the music. And if you have a problem with either, I don't know which. I don't know what more you want.
I mean, which do you prefer? Do you prefer Duel of the Fates or Battle of the Heroes in terms of music or choreography?
That is
it's a tough question.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer because
they both have a lot of weight to them, a lot of story going on. They're both extremely well choreographed. They both have fantastic soundtracks. The emotion in both is immense. So I often don't find it particularly easy to pick between the two.
I think I would have to categorize it like this. While I'm watching the movie, the one that feels a little bit more impactful to me is Battle of the Heroes, just because I feel like the stakes are way higher in that fight in general. Maybe not way higher, but it's the culmination of a bunch of decisions finally being executed by master and apprentice. But if I had to, be listening to one right now without watching any of the movies, definitely Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, I think Duel of the Fates stands really well on its own, better than Battle of the Heroes. But I think Battle of the Heroes probably has more emotion and weight to it, even though what we've said about Duel of the Fates basically being the turning point in the whole saga, I don't know, they're both on a pretty even footing for me, to be honest. So I think we've covered pretty much everything, because I think the only things after that are Qui-Gon's funeral, Obi-Wan taking on Anakin as an apprentice, and the celebration at the end.
And the Obi-Wan part is obviously explained by the promise he made to Qui-Gon.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't think there are any problems there. So I think we've made it through the movie.
I think we have. So, let me have a quick tot up. So, I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think we got about 10 or 11 genuine problems, but those being problems that are very tenuous at best. I think our biggest gripe was Maul's tracking of the ship. I think that was our biggest problem. I think that was probably the biggest problem.
I think it would have been that, and then the disappearing blockade. I think.
Nah, that one's not quite as high on our list anymore.
I feel like that one could be a lot more justifiable.
It's a lot more justifiable. But yeah, there's just not enough in the film to like actually, for it to be worth what we see. So there we go. We've now gone through the Phantom Menace, and we've, I think, debunked quite a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about what exactly some people think are flaws with the film, and tried to clear up some of that. while also discussing what we think the actual genuine flaws with the film are. And we're not saying it's a flawless film. None of the Star Wars films are flawless. They all do have their own set of problems. It's just that Phantom Menace, there's really not that many that are huge problems. That, like, even our biggest problem is still pretty minor in the long run. I mean, especially when you compare it to like looking at the Disney films.
Yeah, like if we were to go down the list of 11 that we found, I'm probably guessing maybe being lenient, or I guess you could say non-lenient, there'd be a maximum of 4 that could be damning to the story. I don't think there's many problems that really made the story non-feasible.
No, and like I said, especially if you compare that to the new films, like the amount of, pretty much every scene in The Last Jedi, you'd probably have about 10 or 11 problems that you could find with each scene. So to only find...
We'd be here for 48 hours.
Exactly. So to find only 10 or 11 genuine flaws in an entire film that are actually, proper flaws, not just like nitpicks, like these are, fair problems that people can have with the films, I think is mark of a pretty good film. I think you definitely couldn't say The Phantom Menace is a bad film. It has lots of problems. I think that would just be wrong, basically. I think you'd be lying to
I think we've proven that.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done a pretty good job today doing that. I think we've done The Phantom Menace a great service.
Definitely.
So hopefully this stream might get shared around a bit, and it might actually help educate some people on what the flaws are, and try and be a bit more objective when watching these films. So I think we've done a good job here today. We've only been streaming for nearly 5.5 hours, but we made it. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be like the end of the stream pretty much. But I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if you want to like tell the people like who you are, or if they want to see anything you do, or just give yourself a shout out,
I'm actually good. I'm happy to be here, to be honest.
All right, well,
it's definitely a fun experience.
It's definitely a fun experience. I think this is the first time we've actually spoken rather than just through text.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
But yeah, I definitely...
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'd definitely like to have you back on. We might have to do episodes 2 and 3 at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And if we can get maybe 1 or 2 guests on for those, it might just help us pick out some of the flaws, because like we like the film, so we're not going to necessarily always pick up on every single flaw. But if we try and get somebody on who like doesn't like them, they're probably more likely to nitpick. So that could be interesting. But we can give it a go. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure having you on. And hopefully we'll get you on one fairly soon. So
sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. So, right, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream. Thank you for coming.